How do you go from 0 to 100 million? What do you think the main thing that changed in your business?
I think product market fit. There's the theory and there's the reality. So the quicker you can actually get into the reality is actually better for you.
How could you leave such a good job at Google?
Someone must be doing this. You could always go back into the tech world. Fantastic foundation to learn the computer science basics, but the actual application is another story.
His company is worth more than $100 million, and he's done it by putting audio ads in games. You know, video ads can be annoying. You can't skip them. But audio ads, on the other hand, you just listen and play. Well, today we're sitting with Wilfred, Obeng, the co-founder and CTO of AudioMob, and we're going to see how he left his safe corporate job at Google to start a huge business in just 4 years. How did he do it? Let's find out. Wilfred, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Honestly, I'm very excited about this episode because we're going to talk about this platform you've created, and if I just summarize it very quickly to all our listeners out there, this platform allows you to create ads and audio ads, not video ads. Everyone knows video ads, they're annoying. You need to click that small X button to skip that ad. You've created a platform with audio ads. You just listen, and whenever you're playing a game, right? Yeah. Now that's very interesting, okay? I want to talk about all of that, but I want to know about Wilfred himself. Like, how did you start? Tell me more about your story. What did you study in university?
Yeah, so my name is Wilfred Obeng. I'm co-founder and CTO at AudioMob. So I studied computer science at university, but before that I was like a very curious, I'm the youngest of 3 brothers, so I was the annoying younger brother who was always asking his older brothers about like technology and like all of these things that they were building. And I always had that curious instinct for like problem solving and engineering. But I just always thought it was cool how like if you coded something, like you could make like a website change color and something like that. So I always thought that was cool, like it's powerful that something you've typed made a machine do something. So yeah, I chose to study computer science at University of Sussex in the UK. And then I started my career. So while I was studying, I was always doing some kind of internship at the side because I think we'll touch on it later, but I just think like practical is very important, and having real life experience in this field is one thing to learn computer science theory. It's one thing to actually see how it's actually applied. So I was in JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and then I was at Google for 3.5 years.
Wait, so you went to study computer science because you wanted to or because your parents wanted you?
Great question. Both. I'll tell you, the truth is both, but I think more so I wanted to, if I'm really honest. And I think it's because, as I said, I was always the kid playing with like Lego and stuff like that, and I just always liked building and problem solving. And I just saw computers as a vessel to help me problem solve a lot of things quicker.
What were you problem solving as a kid?
So as a kid, it was more like, as I said, I was always just, my brother would be doing something on the computer, I would just be like, what did you do to make this change? And they, to kind of make me go, wait, but we did this and this. And I was like, actually, that's kind of interesting. So then I was always wondering, what else could you do with these machines? And it was very early on, like this is not, I think, to be honest with you, the machines that we had back then, our phones are probably 1,000 times more
Windows
powerful.
95,
yeah, exactly.
98.
This is what I'm talking, exactly what I'm talking about.
And so you had that problem solving thing, you went to study computer science, you graduated, you started working at Google?
Yes.
Why Google?
I think every person who studies computer science is the dream job, right? And I think, and actually, most precisely, it was also because I saw a YouTube video about the Google work culture.
So in Google, like it's just an environment where they put everything there. What do they put there?
Everything. So like breakfast, lunch and dinner is free. There's gyms, music rooms, games rooms, sleeping pods, doctors, like...
Doctors, you have doctors come to treat you at Google.
They have a doctor on site.
It's crazy.
Yeah. In some offices, it's doctors on site. Massage therapists. It's like, it's everything you can imagine.
So you could never leave?
Pretty much, especially in the Mountain View. I'd say in the American offices, like even they have the laundry. So like you can go and like wash your stuff or stuff. And there's also some of the restaurants in the American offices are even open on Saturdays.
That's crazy. And how long did you stay in Google?
3.5 years.
What were you doing there?
Engineering role. So first role, I was actually a technical consultant for like Amazon, Hilton and Intercontinental. I was basically helping them use the data they already have, like, loyalty schemes and stuff, to target users in the Google ecosystem.
Like, give me an example.
Like for example, if someone, was part of a very loyal Hilton customer, right? how could you then make it more likely that they would come back and book again, right? For example. So it might be that you want to get someone who's really loyal to maybe go on a holiday, for example, to the Maldives and then book a hotel, right? So what you might want to do is make the creative more relevant to them. So you can use a lot of interesting things to do that, right? You don't just have to use someone's location, you can bring in weather information. So there's cool things you can do with, like, if I know it's raining in London, right? I could basically say, hey, what about a sunny getaway to the Maldives? So there's all of these interesting ways you can drive that user.
That's how you were targeting them.
Yeah, so there's different ways that you can target people with dynamic ads as well, yeah. So it's really interesting.
So it was basically the Google Ads platform you guys were using to target all these users.
Exactly, yeah.
And then how long, you told me 3 years, right? You were at Google. And then you decided you wanted to start something?
Yeah.
Now tell me about the story. Now, AudioMob today is worth, your company's worth more than $100 million. Yes. How'd you start it?
Yeah, so starting it was really an idea between me and Christian, who's my co-founder and CEO. And we just had this moment where Christian, first and foremost, was making a lot of these games, these mobile games, and he just didn't like the background music of these games. So he was like, is there a way like we could just stream like the music that was relevant, that I like, into the background? Maybe it'd be like jazz or hip hop or rock, and it can basically be whatever the user wanted to hear rather than this generic music. So that was the idea Christian had. And then while we're exploring that, we were a bit like, okay, we were playing a lot of the mobile games, listening to the stuff. We were like, actually, you know, the audio ecosystem is booming. And this was during times where podcasts had just started rising. Spotify was also rising. SoundCloud was also rising. So we're like, okay, there's a lot of audio going digital. And this was in the back of our heads. This wasn't really, we were thinking about it. But
Which year was this?
Oh, this was like 2020. Okay. So it was just before like all of the big, you know, Spotify podcast deals. And then we also were like, wait a second, but this video ad experience in these mobile games is very annoying. And it's almost this like eureka moment where we're like, wait, what if we took all these audio ads that you kind of see in Spotify and you see in, you know, SoundCloud, and what if we put those into these mobile games? Because it would mean, you know, the game developers, rightfully so, can make money, but we're not interrupting the user with this very like blocking video ad that stops them from playing their game. So this was really like the eureka moment. And then we said, actually, someone must be doing this, because we're like, there's all of these big companies out there, someone is doing this. And when we saw no one was, we're like, okay, we need to start this and we need to basically scale this fast, because someone is definitely going to come into the market and try to do this.
You know what's so annoying? You know that X when you play games on your phone, and when you try to tap it and you just keep on clicking all these links? So you fixed that issue. You were like, I don't want people to tap on that X, get annoyed with this experience. I'll just put audio, and audio you don't need to skip it, right? It's just like you listen while you're playing.
Exactly.
And when you thought of that idea, how would you go and do it? Because you were an employee at Google, and was your co-founder as well an employee?
Yeah, so I met Christian at the Google Christmas party. That's where I actually met him for the first time. And he then went on to Facebook, or it's called Meta now. And then we realized, and we both basically, when we realized this, we had both left our jobs. So Christian had left Meta, I had left Google, and that's when we began. So you can imagine, we've left these basically, you know, good jobs. At the time, I was promoted twice at Google. So I could have just continued on the scale, but I
was going to ask, how could you leave such a good job at Google?
It's not easy, to be honest, but I think we just had such a strong conviction of the problem. Because we're like, wait, if we can do this, this basically means there's a lot of, as you said, happy consumers. Developers don't have to play this game of whether how much video ads they push affects how much their retention, so how many people actually play the game. So they don't have to balance this anymore. And then the advertisers, who are usually, you know, used to radio, where they can't track as much, can now have all of this digital data. So when we realized that all three of these problems could be solved by this one solution, we were just so convinced at that conviction that we just went, okay, let's start this. And I also think what I thought in my head, and I think most entrepreneurs, is kind of a bit of a delusion. It's a bit of what's the word I would say? It's a bit of arrogance not in a negative way, but in a good way to believe, okay, we can actually execute this. And so I think a bit of both, a bit of delusion, a bit of arrogance to say, we can be the people to solve this, and why not us, to be honest? Because we've been in these companies, we understand how this works, we're solving for free people's problems with one solution. And the other thing I felt was, to be honest with you, you could always go back into the tech world as a default if you failed. And to be honest, failing isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's then that you've tried and you actually raised it. And I also was thinking about how much things I could learn on that journey of creating your own company.
Was your family against it?
No, about building the business, because I think at that time they had saw like, okay, he's managed to progress in Google. He probably has a good enough understanding of what he's doing. But I think deep down they probably might have been a bit nervous though. And I think that's the issue. I think they might have been like, okay, you're leaving a stable job for something, you don't even have investors yet. And I guess it also didn't help 3 months after we started, the pandemic hit. So it was really like, they're probably like, I'm not sure this was, the right choice.
How did you feel when the pandemic hit? Like, how did your company survive?
Oh, that's a great question. So first 3 months in, so what I did is I called in a lot of favors. So being ex-Google, Google has a campus, Google for Startups, in London, actually in a lot of countries actually, and a lot of cities. So what I did was I said, hey, can you help me get like a few seats? So it was just me and Christian, just 2 seats in this campus, and that was it. And 3 months in, they're like, oh, we have to close. Because of the pandemic, they said we can't have all these people from all these different places all in one room during the pandemic. So we closed, and I think that's when we realized, okay, we really need to go to a drawing board around like, who's gonna be our first clients? What are we gonna do? Because like, this is literally like a make or break, right? So what we did is we said, okay, who will still have marketing budget in a pandemic? Because if you think about it, what first got cut in a lot of these companies was marketing. It's not essential, right? There's more important problems.
Exactly, when COVID happened, marketing is the first thing to be cut. And you guys were into marketing. So how were you able to sell with all of this going on?
So what we did is we said, what industry is resistant? And we noticed during the pandemic, music was being consumed a lot. So we're like, okay, this is an angle, because a lot of, at that time especially, there was a lot of game takeovers. So like, for example, you're seeing a lot of like artists putting themselves into games because they understood a lot of gamers were also into music. So first thing we did was like, okay, let's go to these music labels, but not go to the direct selling teams because they're probably not going to take this seriously. So what we did is we went to the innovation team at Warner Music, and we spoke to them. We said, hey, look, we're a new startup. This is what we're building. This is what we think we can do. With
but how did you reach to Warner Media?
Email, LinkedIn. This is a great question, actually, the practicality of it. So it was sporadic sending messages to everyone and finding that person. And when we found the person in the innovation team, sending like LinkedIn. And then when they gave their email, to send an email explaining what we're going to do. And I think I to this day, I have a lot of respect and a lot of thanks for that team, because they were like, okay, let's actually hear them out and let's try it, because this actually sounds quite interesting. So they gave us a budget, I think it was like $3,000 to run our first campaign.
Okay, and when you got this $3,000, did you have the technology built already?
Yes, at that point we had built the technology.
So you guys built the technology before going after these companies?
Of course, you
wanted to test it out?
So that's a great question. So the first thing was building that actual first technology, and then getting, the second part was then getting that first budget to put through the technology.
How much did you start with?
It was me and Christian with our own, basically money we had saved from our salaries. Then we had basically put into the company. So we, like everyone calls it, bootstrapped it. We basically were bootstrapping the company to make the first basic product. And then when we had proven the first basic product is only when we had went for investment. And pitching to investors, explaining what we're doing. But we knew we had to have some kind of proof of concept. Even if it was basic, and I can tell you for now, it's not even if, it was very basic. It was like the most, not how it looks now, polished and does this and that. It was very basic, like image comes up and the ad will just start. But it was to show that like that process flow. And what we saw is when developers saw it, they went, oh, oh, I get what you're doing now, and this does make sense. But then came, another 100 questions.
So what I understand is whenever a developer talks to you regarding the game, what happens is the game plays, someone's playing the game, and the skippable ad comes out. There's audio playing, like a song or like a commercial ad, and the ad doesn't stop me from playing, right?
Exactly.
I'm playing and I'm listening.
Yes.
Okay. How do you make sure that people listen to these ads if they have their volume at 0?
Yes, perfect question. So this is a lot of what we also had to research in that first year, because that was the biggest problem for us. Because to your point, it's a bigger problem for the advertiser. Because the advertiser does not want to pay you more money than they're paying for a banner image if they can't hear it. So it's a big problem. So what we had to do is work out, how can we do volume detection? How can we detect before we play this ad that someone has actually got their volume up? So that's a lot of the technology we had to develop. So we're able to do that on iOS and Android. So before an ad is played, we're able to say the volume level. So for skippable ads, if the volume is below 10%, we don't show the ad and we don't send a request. For rewarded ads, if the volume isn't above 30%, because advertisers want to pay more for the rewarded one, because it's got a better, if you're a gamer, if people understand, it's got a better affinity, right? It's like, oh, I got a new life, and then I heard a McDonald's ad, or I got a new life, and then I heard a Pepsi ad. It's more of a better affinity, because people feel like, I got something out of that. I got 50 coins, or I got something for.
Could you explain how you get rewarded in games?
Yeah, so I think for anyone who's listening, and I think a lot of people. Actually, to be fair, I think in the Middle East people understand this a lot better when it comes to gaming. Like, it's 3 billion people playing mobile games. And also, to clarify, it's not, people also feel like it's a very male-dominated space, which is not true. Like, it's around 45% female playing mobile games. And the other really interesting fact is also parents playing mobile games. So, like, for example, with puzzle games, it index very high with mums and dads.
Moms and dads play puzzle games?
Yes. A lot of puzzle games.
And a lot of Candy Crush.
Yes, a lot of Candy Crush. And by the way, there's even a research paper by Activision Blizzard that talks about the percentage of gamer moms. And Activision Blizzard is the Call of Duty creators, talking about mobile games and talking about gamer moms and how it's become so big. And even for us, we've done campaigns with like Pampers. So you can imagine, like, people think, oh, you only probably do a campaign with like Justin Bieber or Xbox. But no, we've done campaigns with also people like Pampers.
So there's a Pampers ad in a game?
Yeah. And actually what we were advertising was for a free pair of nappies.
Wow.
But targeting particularly puzzle games to targeting more about mums.
That's crazy. So these ads are even reaching games when you guys are. And that's interesting targeting, because not a lot of people think that they can find their audience on these platforms. And you guys are taking advantage of that.
Exactly.
So you built the technology, you got Warner Media's first client, that was $3,000. Did you get them results?
Yes. So I think this is another interesting thing, and a lot of people will think, oh, it's audio, so probably the engagement, meaning like people don't do something once they hear it. But what we actually found is people do engage, actually. We actually have, like, on average, a 1% to 2% click rate. So people don't understand, like, if you have a banner ad, just to create some context to that, is a banner ad sometimes is only like 0.05% to 0.5%. So we're talking about like 1% to 2% of people tapping this banner when there's an audio added. So you're talking about a massive increase there in terms of engagement of that ad. And then what we saw on top of that, which was really interesting, is especially when it was a famous voice or an influencer, the amount of people who click, you'd get to 5 to 10%.
Give me an example.
So for example, we've done campaigns with like Justin Bieber, Nas, and when people heard the voice, or like Ed Sheeran, of like, hey, it's Ed Sheeran, check out my new single, or hey, it's Justin Bieber, check out my new single called this, the engagement would skyrocket. Or another example I can give you is like KSI. So we did a campaign with KSI. It's one of our most popular campaigns because the engagement was so high because they could hear KSI's voice. And this is something very interesting now that we're exploring around how can influencers now use their voices to basically give those to different campaigns. So not just a video, but like more now also just lending their voices.
Because right now, you could use AI or an influencer could use
Yeah.
AI to license their voice, right?
Exactly.
Is this something you guys are experimenting in?
Exactly. Yes. So this is something we're actually starting to explore. So the whole idea of like an influencer marketplace. So allowing an influencer to basically license their voice, you don't even have to get out of bed. You can literally just, give us like 30 seconds. Or to be honest, a lot of influencers already have the content online. So we just feed this into a model. It basically learns like how you speak, what your intonations are, and then we're able to then, say like use this for different marketing campaigns with different brands.
It's crazy, Wilfred. I've seen this AI model where you put in your pictures and then you just type in, I want to be in an Adidas ad. And it creates an ad where you're wearing Adidas clothes and you're outside. I want an ad where I'm doing this. So all these certain different ads are coming out just by feeding that AI model your pictures. So we could see the future going crazy, and I'm sure in audio it's much easier right now.
Yeah, agreed. So I think that's one of the beauties we always say about audio, and I think this is where we always saw this as a massive opportunity, because we were seeing like all of this stuff that was happening with deepfakes, like even that Kendrick Lamar video where his face keeps changing into the different artists and stuff, and they were using deepfake technology. And that was really interesting. And we're like, well, if you can do that with video, how much easier is that to do with just the audio file, right? It's like just on an engineering standpoint, it's thousands of times, easier to do it with audio. So that's where we thought there's a big opportunity, and that's when we started doing it. And the other thing we're doing as well is making the audio. It goes back to kind of what you asked me, like what I was doing with brands before, is making the audio hyper-targeted. So it means like we can use information like your device language, where your device is, to then do custom messaging. To give an example, I think the UAE is a perfect example, because it's a country a bit like Belgium, where there's multiple different languages being spoken. So we're able to use that device language to then say, okay, this person has their phone set to Arabic, so send them the Arabic creative. This person has their phone set to Hindi, send them the Hindi creative. This person has their phone set to English, send them the English creative. So we're able to actually start doing those kind of things, but then also customizing the audio to say, hey, good morning Abu Dhabi, or good morning Dubai, and then actually making it very customized to that user. Or for example, another one we do is, because we know the game you're playing. It's like, and we know you're playing, I don't know, Hold.io. What do you think about this kind of game? So it is actually passing that information in to make it more contextual, because we see that the engagement, and it's very human, right? If you feel it's a bit like, oh, actually that's kind of interesting, or like this makes it a bit more, relevant to me, the more you engage.
That's very interesting, because back in the day you used to make videos and just start by saying, hey Abu Dhabi, hey Dubai, whatever you want to target, or whenever you want the algorithm to push your video to certain places. But what you're doing now is using AI, using these tools. I could just change the audio according to that person's place, to what he's doing, what game they're playing, and you've seen more people clicking on these ads.
Yes. Yeah, and so that's the interesting. And the cool thing is about, and this is the engineering part of and this is the bit I love. It's like engineering plus the creative marketing side, right? Because as you said, you can make all of these clips in seconds. We can make thousands of them. So very quickly, like, oh, this is engaging. When we say to this particular audience, they start engaging more, and we're able to see all of those different funnels, and we're then able to then do it more to certain areas. So if we know it's really working when we say, good morning Abu Dhabi, we can be like, okay, we're gonna basically push more of the traffic when we say that. And if we know it's not really working in other regions, you're able to do that. But we're not talking about like, you wait a week. This is like in 30 minutes, you're able to see, with enough, traffic, what's going on.
And can you give me an example of an audio ad that's been performing very well for you guys, that's making a lot of people click on that ad?
Yeah, so I think to give good examples, like with Pepsi, we did like a Mountain Dew, because they own Mountain Dew. So we did a Mountain Dew campaign with them, and they had different flavors for different regions in America, which is really smart. So they were basically saying like, for this region, which they knew, of course, because they have the data of what the sales are in different states. So they could basically, put different creatives in different states, and that we saw, like, you could see the engagement rate change between the different states, and it's really interesting. But it also means you can A/B test.
So there's a drink for every part of the region. Is that it, or is that?
So there's different flavors, but they're obviously popular in different states.
Okay.
So by having that data, they've made different ad creative. So it might say, hey, try the cherry cola flavor. Hey, you know, in this place, try the orange flavor, because they already know, you know, from the sales.
From the sales in that specific state.
Exactly.
That's interesting. And what was your favorite campaign working? Like which client was it?
Favorite campaign? That's a great question. I'd probably say as a hip hop fan, Nas. I would say as a hip hop fan, it probably have to be Nas. Because that was a direct campaign we did. And what was really cool is we spoke to his manager and he just recorded a voice note. And so we were able to blend his voice into it. So he says like, hey, it's Nas, check out this song. And I thought, this for me, I was like, this is really cool. Like actually how it feels seamless. It doesn't feel like an ad, as you say. It doesn't feel like you're being bombarded. And it performed very well. Like it really, and you could see people engaging on it and people tapping on it. And then also what it did is it was linking to Spotify or to Apple Music, for example. So I think that's really cool because we're not just driving just branding. It's like it was taking them to Spotify, or was taking them to, and a lot of people, what we saw was people would save. Because you know, if you're playing a game, you're not necessarily going to, but you will save it and come back. So you'll save, okay, I'll save it to playlist and then come back. So I think that was really cool to see.
So if you could, let's go back to your journey. Like after WarnerMedia, you got a couple more clients and you started growing from there. And you have the technical background, your co-founder has the marketing and sales background, correct?
Yeah.
And from there, how did you start getting more and more clients? Was it only word of mouth? Was there something, were you creating ads? What was it?
Great question. And I always say this, case studies. So what we realized very quick is, especially when you're a young company, like you need to prove like everyone, like there's always an option that they could have, right? They could go to Google, they could go to Meta, they could go to TikTok, especially in marketing, there's like so many options. So we realized we need to do a case study. We need to make sure like people understand there's value here. Like it's very easy to just say oh, we did this cool thing with this name, but people want, what is the value? So that's why we were able to stuff, and that's why we were able to track a lot of information. So this is what I mean by taking the audio, which is one of the oldest forms of advertising, because it comes from the days of radio advertising hundreds of years ago, and then bringing that into the digital world. So tracking things like how much of the audio ad has someone listened to? Did they skip? Did they tap the banner? What volume did they listen to? Do they have their headphones connected? What device are they using?
Most people listen to audio on their phones at what volume?
Great question. So we actually have the distribution. So the distribution shows that most people, first stat I have is 75% of people have their volume above 10%. And that's across our network. That's all of the ad requests for 2024. I know that is actually the number. It's 75% of people have their volume above 10%. And then in terms of the thresholds, we see actually the majority of people, even within that, have it above 30. And the other thing we're noticing from the data is because, this is really interesting because it shows the adoption of things like AirPods. We actually are also seeing that the percentage of people with their headphones connected is growing year on year on around 20%. So, because we actually know that the amount of people that actually have headphones connected, because we can basically ask the operating system, hey, you know, is it disconnected? And then it basically provides that information saying yes.
So 20% of people who play games have their AirPods connected?
Yeah. Or some kind of headphones. It doesn't have to be, some kind of headphones, yeah.
Interesting. And how do you go from 0 to 100 million? What do you think the main thing that changed in your business?
I think product market fit, to be honest with you. I think product market fit because we started with our seed stage funding, which was around 750K. And it was really getting that product market fit to get people to really understand what we're building. And what I mean by that, when I say I think that's jargon, so I can go into a bit deeper about that, is really getting the customers to be aligned with what your goal is, because that wasn't always the case. And I think it's never always the case with any company that started, right? I think any company, you could talk to any entrepreneur, they'll tell you when they first started, someone was telling them, no, this is a crazy idea, you should never do it. So that's a lot of people asking us, like, how many people actually have their volume up? Is this really going to work? How much money will people pay?
Was this when you were raising funds?
Yes. Yeah, this is exactly what we're raising funds. And and just to be clear, I don't want to give the whole, romanticized version of it where people say, oh, I just raised this money. Like, that was after 35 no's. So, like, and I remember
35 people said no until you got your first yes?
Yes, 35 investors said no. Like, and by the way, it wasn't like just no, get out. It was more like no, but They're like, what about if Google came into this? Or what about if Meta does this? Or, you know, how many people have their volume up? And we basically had to make a deck where we explained that, you know, yes, these are multi-billion-dollar companies, but for them, it's that age-old thing, right? It takes a while to turn a ship, right? It takes a while to turn that ship. So by the time it's taken them to get to this point of we should explore this, we can scale. And so it was really explaining that. And then the other thing was, this is why we said it was so important to file patents immediately. Like, so as soon as we started, especially coming from these corporates, we were like, okay, to be honest, we weren't even worried about the other startups trying to do this. It's like, that's fair, you know, that's a fair fight, you know, that's a more fair competition, fair like back and forth. But more the big corporates coming in. So that's why for us, it was always so important to get these patents filed.
I think you spent $500,000 on patents.
Yeah. So we spent a lot, and to be fair, a lot of that was just filing it. And then the rest is that we basically ring fence that to protect and continue the process, right? So we're filing patents, it is a long process.
And what were they about?
So it's about the whole, so with patents, there's different kind of patents you can do. You can do like a direct product patent. This is like saying you have a particular spoon, I don't know, you've created, or you've got, in engineering, it could actually be a material. And you could say, I own the patent for this material. And you see this a lot, like I'm sure there's like a lot of fiberglass patents and stuff like that. But you can also do a patent on a process. So what we have in our patent, and here is like a process, is the whole idea of requesting audio content. And to be clear, we were very clear with the language, not an audio ad, but an audio content, because we also knew it's not just about advertising, it could be about music or something else in the future. Then it's doing volume detection, making sure it can be heard. So before you can charge someone, you should really, especially audio advertising, you should make sure it can be heard.
But how come no one patented this before?
This is what amazed us, and to be honest, like the level of patents we managed to get through shocked us. And for context as well, it's like people, if people aren't familiar with the process, it isn't as simple as, oh yeah, anyone can just file the patent and it goes through. No, they challenge you. It's like school. They got examiners on the patent office. They say, look, we've looked at what you're submitting. We can see on the people who have already got patents. This is all of the stuff they have. Why is your patent different from Google, Meta, and things patent? Tell it and you have to respond. Well, I say our patent lawyer has to then respond, bullet point, but they'll obviously talk to me and be like, okay, technically, what is it that you're doing? Like that will give us a strong argument. So there was patents that came up with Google Waves. There was patents that came up with all sorts of different companies. Before they then granted it by us explaining, look, no, this is different. This is about audio advertising. This is about, actually getting all of the tracking metrics. And then they push through to grant. So this is where I always say it's a journey, and it's not a short journey. Patents, it's like 1 to 2 years to go from filing to grant. And the fact that we managed to get most of our patents granted in 12 months, like we've got patents granted across over 14 EU countries. We've got patents in the US. We've also got patents in Japan, China. Getting all of these done is a maze, to be honest with you, in getting them actually filed, but then also granted.
So it's very hard to have competitors when you have a lot of patents. Do you have any competitors right now?
Yeah, we do. And to be fair, so what we do is, the difference here is really around, a lot of our competitors are in the market, but they aren't really doing all of the processes we're doing in our patents. Mm-hmm. But for us, that's not a problem, because it crafts a more premium niche for us, because we're able to say, look, we are able to do the volume detection, which is one of the most important things, because the difference here is, right, if I'm advertising on Spotify, I know you'll have your volume up. There's no way you're listening to Spotify with the volume down. It just doesn't make any sense, right? And if you listen to a podcast, there is no way you're listening to a podcast with the volume down. It just doesn't make any sense. However, there could be a moment in time that you're playing a game with the game's volume muted. So this is where it's critical for us to be able to have that justification when we go to advertisers to say, hey, you should pay us X amount because we're guaranteeing you it can be heard. We're providing an audience that is not just, one audience. It's a very diverse audience of 3 billion gamers. And you didn't have all of these metrics, all of this analytics that you had before, if you just paid on radio.
How many clients do you have right now?
In terms of on the advertiser side?
Yes.
On the advertiser side, we have over 6,000 advertisers.
6,000 advertisers.
Yeah.
On the gamer side?
On the gamer side, we have over 100 game developers.
And do you just do games or do you do other?
Great question. No, so we've actually, and the reason why we call ourselves AudioMob is because we see like there's a massive opportunity outside of gaming as well. Because we started a bit selfishly as gamers, right? Of this is a problem for gamers, but there's a lot of apps that people use and they use video ads and it, you're stuck for 30 seconds and you're like, okay, let me, I want to move forward, but, and you can't. So we realized so this is why we've moved outside into podcast apps. And then slowly we're now moving into general apps. And then we're exploring stuff like TV. And then we're also going to be looking at stuff like, in the future, we're looking at other places where you can basically apply these audio ads, like in the car, for example. Because if you think about it, there's all sorts of different ways you could start implementing audio.
And what are the top 3 games people play?
In genre or actual games?
Actual games on their phones.
It's interesting, People will be surprised that I think everyone would think it's like Candy Crush, Angry Birds, right? What you actually see is a lot of the hyper casual games. So like a lot of the studios we integrate with like Tap Nation, Voodoo, you'll see like some of the most popular games being like Hold the Oyo, Mob Control, Inventory Attack. Like these are all like hyper casual games, but millions of users playing this every day. Like, I always say this to people, if you don't believe those metrics, take the time to observe people. Like for example, if you're waiting for your flight, look around and you'll see what people are playing. It'll be a puzzle game, it'll be a short snackable content. If you're even in the waiting for your doctor, just look around, you'll see what people are playing. Or in London, if you look on the tube, if you look on the underground, you'll see people are playing these kind of games and to buy time. While they get to their destination. So, and we see it, of course, on the data. You see these different sessions pop up, like very early in the morning, a lot of sessions. Midday, during breaks, a lot of sessions. After work, a lot of sessions. So you see this behavior.
What time did you notice that most people play mobile games?
Funny enough, on the morning, especially in the UK and America, like 7 to 9, a lot of sessions.
But that's work time.
Oh, 7 a.m. to 9, on the tube journey.
Yeah.
So early in the morning.
The train, on the way to work.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, and there's this guy that walks around the streets of London asking people, do you have a dream?
Yeah.
Tell me your dream. And he came to you.
Yeah.
And you were like, sorry mate, I'm busy, I'm in a meeting. And then he's like, no, listen to me, what's your dream? And you said, I already got my dream. I already had my dream. Yeah. And I had it here in the UAE. Yeah. Tell me about that. What was that interaction like?
It was really interesting interaction, to be honest, because for me, it was a moment where and I had this reflection moment of, I always, even though I'd worked at these companies, I even found very old, when you do like applications to school and stuff like this, when you have to go between the different schools or this age group. I found one where I said in it, oh, I want to own my own, my exact words were own my own IT company. Because I was very young, back in the day, everyone used to say IT only, not enough about tech and all this stuff. And I saw that, and it made me realize that actually, when he asked me that question, I was like, no, I actually have, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And that was my goal, to have my own company. But before that, obviously I knew there were steps I had to take. But it was always the end goal. So it kind of did catch me off guard. And I was like, no, I actually managed to do that. And we're here now.
And you said Abu Dhabi. Why Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, great question. So why I ended up in Abu Dhabi, very interesting and funny story. So when we started the company, me and Christian were talking, and I said to him, I just wanted to do a quick break, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the UAE. So I was between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and Christian said, before I went, typical CEO, typical salesperson, right? He was like, when you go, I was looking at, some of the information and data, on sales, and I can see there's a lot of like audio advertising. I can see there's a lot of gaming. He said, when you're there, maybe if you see someone, or someone there, you can ask them, just as curious, like what's going on? Why is it such a trend upwards? I remember listening. I was like, I'm not going there to do investigation on this. This is not why I'm here. I'm there to relax. But I guess every entrepreneur knows, even if you say that, you don't really mean it. There's always a curious thing. When he said that to me, and especially with a science degree, I was like, the data, I was like, it's kind of interesting. Why is this happening here? So then I was like, okay, you know what? I will message someone. So I messaged a friend who was living out here who had his own company. I said to him, could you direct me with someone who's in like the startup ecosystem in Abu Dhabi or in Dubai or whichever? And he said, oh yeah, I know someone. He's like, oh, I'll introduce you to Nadar at Hub 71. I was like, okay, I'll have the meeting with him. So I had the meeting with him and I explained to him what we're doing, a virtual meeting. And he was like, oh, this is very interesting. But he was like, I have to be honest with you, because I would take this company, but it's more aligned with AD Gaming and with 2454, which is a gaming media and entertainment hub. I was like, okay. I said, send me to, and I did my research. I was like, okay, these sound interesting. Send me to them. And when I spoke to them, they were explaining about this whole vision of what they're building. This was before this hub, the Creative Hub was created. They explained that they had the mock-ups. I remember the mock-ups. I still have the PDF of the whole mock-ups. And they're like, this is what we're creating. We're offering subsidies, an office in Yas Island. It will be a hub with other games company, Unity, Ubisoft are already here. And I thought to myself, okay, this is actually a good idea, because I was like, wait, this is a place where I could actually challenge for talent with Google and the Metas of the world, or the TikToks of the world, because I can give them a compelling offer, right? I can say to them, somewhere safe, somewhere sunny, somewhere tax-free, and somewhere with a load of opportunities for you and the team to us and the team to grow. So when I thought of those three things, I remember going to our investors and being like, actually, I'm gonna put the engineering office in Abu Dhabi. And I think everyone was like, really? Like, why? But when I explained, as I said, there's three things, I was like, okay, actually, I see why you're doing that. And that's what we've been doing. We've just been scaling ever since. So that's the reason for Abu Dhabi. I think some of the other practical reasons for me that were really stood out from when I was choosing was also it's the capital. I think that's very important. That, like it's like for any country, right? And I think it's important that we knew that there's a lot of business that happens here. There's obviously tourism, but there's a lot of business that actually happens here. So that was also really important when we were thinking about this. So one is the capital, two, there's the ecosystem, and three, there's all of those opportunities for the staff and incentives that I could give the staffs here.
Who is your role model, Wilfred?
Oh, that's a great question. I think for me, my role model when I was a kid was probably my uncle. I say I have a lot of role models, but I think when I really think about it, I think he was my role model alongside obviously my parents. But I think when I saw him, and the reason why I'll explain is, he was a person who got a scholarship directly from Ghana to the United States to work at NASA. So he went to Oregon University, then afterwards he worked at NASA afterwards. And so for me, that was a very, It was a very clear beacon for me of like what is possible. And I was always impressed by that story. The fact that he got a scholarship directly, like I was like, obviously you have to be incredibly smart, then to go to Oregon University, and then after that to work at NASA. I think for me it was always fascinating. And when I remember always phoning him and asking him like, oh, what are you working on? And obviously he can't tell you the exact details, but he's like, oh, heat shielding and stuff like this. You're like, this is, and as an engineer, you're like, this is super interesting. Like something that you've created is in space. And to me, that was always fascinating. And that's what made him like a role model of like what is possible and what you can actually do is actually endless if you really apply yourself and really are like laser focused. So I think for me that was almost like a really strong role model.
So he played a major role in the way you think and the way you approach things.
And I think what's interesting about that, he did without necessarily fully knowing that, because he lives in the States, right? He wasn't like there day to day with me, but it was always cool to me, like speaking to him and thinking like, oh my God, like he's really building these kind of things. He's working on the team. Obviously it's a big team, but still it's amazing to know that he's contributing to these things, contributing to these calculations, contributing to building these kind of probes and stuff. So yeah, I think that for me was always something that fascinated me.
There's something I wondered about. AudioMob. How did you get that name?
Great question. So we did a brainstorming session, and we were looking at different other companies. So you can see a lot like Google's like AdMob, you can see a lot, and basically mob is just short for mobile, right? So a lot of these companies had it, and we're just like, well, let's just make it say what we're doing, which is audio and mobile. But then we also were thinking, what if we eventually move outside of the gaming space or the mobile space? So we wanted a name that we could also like shorten so that it's just like group of people doing something around audio rather than also just being mobile. So that was also where we were thinking of from very early, like it wasn't always going to be gaming or apps. We always knew that there was going to be other opportunities, and we just saw, to be honest with you, we also saw audio as a way of almost like a forgotten format that people forget about, but we use it every day.
It's crazy because when I'm driving, I listen to podcasts. When I'm busy doing something, I'll just listen, even when I'm working. So we're always listening, we're not always watching. Even most of YouTube videos, I think, are listened more than they're watched. Have you noticed that as well?
100%. I fully agree with you, and I think that's why I also had a personal affinity to it. I 100% agree with you. Like for me, I will like turn on an audio book and then do like cleaning, or turn on an audio book or cook something, or do something, because it's something you can do while you can do something else. And I've always thought that that was a powerful thing about audio. And I think a lot of people, they don't necessarily believe that, how much are people actually listening? But I always tell people, like, you can always test this, right? Like, how quick can you learn like your favorite song's chorus? Think about it.
So quick.
But you're not actively going like, I'm reciting the lyrics. No, but after like 3 listens, once it gets to the chorus, you usually can recite, like what the first few words are. And that shows you the power of like the subconscious.
You can even learn languages while you're driving.
Exactly.
You just listen and repeat, and you do all of that.
Exactly.
Do you read any books?
Yes, yeah. A lot of books.
What books do you read?
My favorite book actually is probably a marketing book, The Purple Cow.
I love that book. Seth Godin.
Yeah.
Great book.
Great book.
How did that help you with your business?
In so many ways.
Really? How?
I think it made it obvious to me that to get ahead of the incumbents, the people who are already in the market, you need to do something different, something opposite. Like something that and even with your like marketing strategies of, like a lot of people will think the best thing to do is when you start a company is pay a marketing agency and get loads and then get them to do all of your content. But there's other like growth hacking, and another book is called Growth Hacking. There's other ways you can do that where you basically can make the content, as you said, yourself in terms of like trying to do more of the social media influencing stuff. But it's also things like making actual relationships with people at these different reporters and making them understand what you're building so that you actually have a very powerful and strong, it might take longer, but stronger relationship with them.
What's something you did that got attention? Like something different that's maybe weird, people did not think about, but you got attention, you grew your business. What's an example of that?
Oh, that's a great question. Something different that we did. That's a great question. I'm actually gonna think about that. Because there's loads of different things, but I am thinking of one that's a very good example. I would say what we found at first, right? And we do a lot of, I think it would have to be like the A/B testing we do with everything, right? With marketing. So I think a lot of people think the marketing approach is just blanket, right? And I think maybe we took an engineer's approach to marketing. So I think maybe people might think it's a bit strange, but we did it across everything. It's not just like, this social media post and this. No, we'll do like, what is the return on investment of us going to events? What's the return of investment of us doing social media? And when I say return of investment, we made it very defined, like how many clients did we get from this? Did they contact us? And we were tracking all of these metrics. So that's where we would really find out, like this event that we like maybe sponsored in our first few years, it didn't bring the return of investment as we just did a normal post in, for example, VentureBeat or Forbes or TechCrunch. Because we would notice, we actually got more leads from this TechCrunch article. And we didn't pay for the TechCrunch article. We spoke to a reporter, they were interested in what we were building, and they recovered it. There was no other thing, and we're realizing, that was free, and that got us 100 leads. And like the stuff that we're doing when we're sponsoring this event only brings like 2 or 3 leads. So that's where we started really A/B testing, not just the social, but actually all forms of marketing to see what was working on our funnel. And I think that's true. I think, and that's just not to say to everyone like listening to say that, oh, you should just follow that. No, because there's some businesses will be the reverse. The social, I mean, the social might not be the way to do it. It might actually be like you need to be doing the physical events.
Mm-hmm. Depends on the
business.
Exactly.
It depends business to business. So that's where I would say it's important to test it rather than saying, I'm gonna just do what this person. No, it's important to test it because for your business, it actually might be the physical events is actually better than the social. But for us, we found this the opposite. It's like actually these posts and stuff we were doing or these articles we were doing were getting more traction than the actual events were getting us.
And how do you manage your time owning $100 million company?
It's a great question. I think it's a difficult act. I think we have to be honest. I think I'm an engineer, so I'm not part of the waking up at 6 a.m. crew. I'm more the other side, where it's the late night, coding kind of mindset. So I'm not one of these people who are going to be like, I get up at 6 a.m. and that's not me. I'm not a morning person. I am definitely a night person. So I think with managing time is difficult. Honestly, I think to say it's easy would be for me to be disingenuous and not tell the truth. I think it's very hard, to be honest. And I think for me, on average, I probably get like 5-6 hours sleep because you're always on. And the reason is we have also 3 offices: London, New York, Abu Dhabi. That's the time zones.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, you need to keep shifting.
Yeah, there's always a ping. There's always a new email because it's like you finish with the Abu Dhabi emails, then London comes online. Then you finish with the London emails, then someone in the American team, just has a ping or has a question. So I think that's what makes it difficult as well. And I think that's just, it's not by me thinking, oh, let's just have loads of offices. No, it's because of the fact that there's 3 billion mobile gamers and it's simply a worldwide phenomenon that everyone, it doesn't matter what country. I can tell you ad requests from, you can name the country, I can tell you that there's like probably 1 million, 3 million, 10 million, 100, 1 billion ad requests coming from these countries. So it's really like everywhere that we're getting ad requests. So that's why we needed to have that footprint to kind of work with the advertisers, but also then work with the developers in these different geos. And
do you think that going forward, what kind of mindset do you need to have to grow this business further? For example, what's your goal? Where do you want to reach?
For us,
is it $1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion? Where do you think your company could reach?
We've always said this, we think that we can go full way to IPO because when I look at other companies that did this in the video space, they're already worth billions. Like if you're talking about like AppLovin, all of these really big corporate companies that are on the stock exchange, you can see their stock right now doing phenomenally well. And you see that we're building that same kind of ecosystem for games and apps and beyond with audio. I think the potential there is incredible. So for me, that's where I do see that we're gonna push, but it's obviously not easy. It's keeping that velocity, and I think that's where we always have to keep, to answer your question around like what's important is to keep learning, and also unlearning. So because I also got taught by my mentors immediately, they said to me, what gets you to this step of $100 million isn't going to be what gets you to $1 billion. You're going to have to learn a whole new set of skills, how to motivate others, how to delegate effectively.
Who are your mentors?
I have 2 mentors, Joya and Atia. They are leadership development coaches. And they've been working with me since I was like 16 years old.
Wow. Do you really think that you need to do something different to reach the billion, 2 billion, 3 billion? And what's that different mindset?
I definitely do think there needs to be a different mindset because, and I can actually really dive into it. I think when you start, you have to be comfortable with the unknown. You have to be scrappy. You cannot be embarrassed. And I'll say why. Scrappy is to make the product. Embarrassed is because you're going to have to ask a lot of people for help, and you're going to have to ask a lot of people, for potential partnership, potential business dealing, and a lot of people will say no. So you have to be able to handle that rejection. And then I think finally, you also just need to have that resilience to also be able to carry on. Like I said, you get 35 no's from investors. A lot of people just say, no, I'm backing up. But you have, that's why I say it's a bit of the arrogance, a bit of the delusion to be like, we can still do this. And I think That's like the first stage, right? So this is what I mean by like, that's the first stage. But when you mature as a business, it's a different skill set. Then you need to start thinking about, okay, we managed to get to this point. We did it scrappily. We got the money and the revenue in, but now we need to make a formalized way of increasing this revenue. Like basically a process that helps us to increase this revenue in a steady way, with the information still being disseminated around the team, not just in someone's head, actually being documented. So that's why I say that it's clear difference, like once you start hitting certain revenue thresholds, that you need to start thinking about, okay, how do I really scale this like a mature company, and who do I need to employ to really bring that structure into the company?
Are you planning to get a new CEO or a new executive leadership team in order to take the company to the next level?
Good question. I think the good thing for us is with our senior leadership team is that they've already got a lot of experience. Like even our chief legal counsel, like helping sell $1 billion company, and also we've got people in our partnerships team used to work at King. We've got people who used to work at G42, so our AI engineers, both of them, both ex-G42. So for us, I think the team there is strong. I think though, to your point, I think the roles will change. And what I mean by that is me and Christian, as the founders, will have less of an involvement with the day-to-day, and it will go more completely just to the strategy and really promotion of the company, talking to chief execs to sign more strategic partnerships.
So you guys are working on that right now?
Exactly. So transitioning the company for more space for the leadership team to basically operate autonomously.
And there's a lot of people entering business right now. What are your advice for entrepreneurs?
I think I said this on the podcast before. I am not part of the group that says just start. I know a lot of people will just tell people just begin. But my advice for entrepreneurs is understand the market you're going to enter before you start. Because I'm a strong believer that with a bit of strategy, I still think there needs to be execution. I still think you need to try things. But with a bit of strategy, I actually think you can get a better grasp of if something will be a success. And what I mean by that, because I know it sounds a bit vague, is there's easy ways in this day and age for you to get feedback from your idea. And I think this is what I love about technology, right? I know people say this, not everything's good about technology, but there's some really great things. Like an Instagram poll could be done right now. Like you could literally find out from a lot of people from your followers what they think about a particular idea. You can do that on LinkedIn, you can do that on Twitter, you can do that on TikTok. You can find out what people think very quickly. Surveys, interviews, meeting people, LinkedIn, right? But I can't imagine our parents' day, like how difficult some of these stuff were, like going to the library.
They'd be lost.
Exactly. You had to go to the library, you would have to use a phone book to find people. Now you can literally Google this stuff, find these people and connect with them. But this is why I say you have to get rid of the embarrassment, right? Because people have that shyness of, no, I don't want to reach out. What if they say no to me? But the funny thing is, most people actually, and I've seen this on even LinkedIn, they won't say no. Like the most thing, you either ignored or they'll actually get back to you. So you haven't lost anything.
Or they'll never get back to you.
They'll never get back to you. So you haven't lost anything though.
That's true. And back to your point, I think we discussed this earlier, that the problem with a lot of engineers is overthinking.
Yes.
They keep overthinking and they don't even execute. They don't start something. How do you fix that overthinking?
I think that's a fantastic question. I say this as an engineer, someone studied computer science, so I 100% agree with you on this. I think engineers, we do overthink, and I think this is why it worked very well with me and Christian, because I always make the joke like he's the one who would jump over the trench, and I'm the one who would probably be like doing the workings of like what we should be doing. But I think that worked, and I think it's rubbed off on each other, if that makes sense. Like, so now, to your point, it's like I've surrounded myself with someone who's more of a someone who defaults to action. What is how I would describe it? He defaults more to get something done, which obviously you need. But being more around that has changed my mindset from that engineering of like, the theory of, we need to make sure these calculations are correct, you need to make sure this algorithm is working correctly, but then moving into more of a default action. So I think first is surround yourself with people who are not like you, who are more default to action. I think too is, at some point, I would say at most points, to be honest with you, there's the theory and there's the reality. So the quicker you can actually get into the reality is actually better for you. Like, and I learned this even doing internships. It's like, it's all great that we learn a lot of these, and don't get me wrong, it's fantastic foundation to learn the computer science basics, but the actual application is another story.
Very nicely said. And it was awesome hearing your story, Wilfred. And again, thank you for sharing it. And I really wish you take AudioMob from 100 million to 1 billion to 5 billion. And we have you again here when you're at $10 billion. Thank you, Wilfred.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching us. Feel free to share your feedback and connect on our platforms. If you know someone with an inspiring story, email us at 100x.abudhabi@gmail.com. Stay tuned for more uplifting business tales.